Attorney Tim Williams answers your most frequently asked questions.
Often we're asked whether or not a person can have a brain injury without a loss of consciousness. Some medical professionals would tell you that you need a loss of consciousness for any significant level of brain injury, and we've seen evidence to the contrary. We've talked to doctors who strongly believe to the contrary. So I'd like to address that just briefly here. What happens in terms of causing a brain injury is generally a strike to the skull, a strike to the head. It's a direct blow. Sometimes you can have what's called a coup contra coup situation, which is, if you think of the brain like jelly in a bowl, in a glass bowl, and you shake the bowl from side to side, you see that jelly or jello shake from side to side. The brain essentially does the same thing in a quick change of momentum of the head. So if your head, let's say you're in a car, you're hit from behind, your head goes back, doesn't hit the headrest, but it goes back over the seat, and then suddenly you're whipped forward like that. Your brain is actually sloshing around, for lack of better words, within your skull itself. And that sloshing causes pressure as it's reaching the terminal end of each direction and pressing up against the inside of the skull. And that pressure then can cause neurological damage, even just microscopic, but it interferes with the pathways, the neural response within the brain itself, the ability to communicate from one area of the brain to the other. And that's what's defined, or how a brain injury in fact is defined. So we're looking for the mechanism of injury. That's what the attorneys would call it. Is it a direct strike to the head? Is it a coup contra coup? Or is it something else? Sometimes a medication, for example, can cause a brain injury, of things of that nature. High fever that's left for too long causes a brain injury, things of that nature. And then we look if the person has gone in for any sort of head imaging, whether it's a CT scan, MRI, or something else. We look for imaging studies that would indicate whether or not there's been a brain injury in this particular case. I've had many cases where the person did not lose consciousness in the event, and they go in for imaging, and there's a giant brain bleed that's developed because of usually a blow to the head. So those are things we're looking for, and clearly in that situation, yes, you can have a brain injury without the loss of consciousness, which is the subject of this video excerpt. And then in addition to the imaging, we look for testing that the doctors perform, the medical professionals perform. Those are testing like pupil response to light. Sometimes hearing can be affected, or taste can be affected in a brain injury. Oftentimes, and more often than not, it's personality change or issues with cognition, fatigue, change in personality, things of that nature. So we're looking for testing results to determine whether or not there's a brain injury. And it's not unusual to see a conglomeration of these events or these testing results, be that a brain bleed, swelling in the brain that's seen on imaging, coupled with personality change, excessive fatigue, pupil dilation and response differences or unusual responses there, things of that nature, without a loss of consciousness. So people ask me, can a person have a brain injury without a loss of consciousness? My answer is a resounding yes. That clearly happens. It happens fairly frequently, and sadly, it can be a lifelong process for the person if it's not treated appropriately. So we take these cases, even without loss of consciousness, very seriously.
If you've been injured and need help, Dwyer Williams Trucos attorneys will get you the settlement you deserve. Experience gets results.